everybody. Welcome to Cooking 101. I'm Jen. I'm a dietitian. I am not a professional chef, but I know some things. Part of my job as a dietitian is helping people kind of navigate how to cook healthier meals for themselves. A lot of things that come up are getting more vegetables, preparing things so you don't feel like you're always slogging through the week, cooking every hour that you want to be resting, or just how to switch things out in your recipes to make them better for you. So because I do a lot of that, I kind of adapted this cooking program to follow that format to help people learn some basics and also just learn some new things about what you can do with your kitchen. My live thing has been malfunctioning all day. Sorry about the pause there. I tried to get this up and running a couple times and it said I had no internet connection. I did have an internet connection, so I can't explain that. Anyway, if I look distracted, that's just because my phone is sending new messages that I've never seen before. Because Facebook keeps reformatting everything, just like we always ask them to, right? Okay, so Cooking 101. Today we're making soup. It is fall. I love fall. I love Halloween. I love October. I love September. It's just a nice time of year. Except today it is like 80 degrees outside. I am very hot. And the AC is not running because it would be loud. So, fall tank top theme, alright. But one of my favorite parts of this time of year is some of the awesome produce that becomes available. It's soup season. It's a really nice time of year to have like nice comforting soups. And soups are an awesome, easy way to eat healthy. I love them. I recommend making soups to so many clients. Why? Well, for starters, when you make a soup, it's literally throwing everything in one pot, and then you can just kind of leave it, walk away. There's no intense, like, you gotta watch it or it's gonna burn. There's no worries about what's gonna happen or fancy tricks. It's throw everything in one place, let it go. Another cool thing about soups is it's a really easy way to pile on the vegetables. You can just throw as many vegetables in a soup as you want, throw something else in there, your protein, and that's a meal. A lot of eating healthy is making sure that at least half of your plate is veggies or fruits. A lot of people feel very daunted by that. But if the only things in your meal are like 3/4 veggies and some sort of protein, it makes eating healthy super, super easy. So soups are a really easy way to do that because they're mostly made of vegetables and then maybe some meat if you're not a vegan, or some beans or lentils if you are a vegan. Or mushrooms, and it's basically, unless you're doing a noodle soup, void of those complex carbs that have all of the high calories in them. So you can always rely on a soup to be a very complete, balanced meal. You can also make a metric ton of it in a short amount of time, because again, throw everything in a big pot, walk away. I tell people to make a giant pot and then freeze some of it so then they have like an emergency meal. So if they're coming home one day and it's a couple weeks out and they're like, I don't want to cook, I'm just going to order a pizza, they have healthy soup in the freezer. Just take it out, microwave it, or put it on the stove or something. And it's vegetables. So soups are a time saver. As long as you're okay with leftovers, they're great for just bulk meal prep. They're probably the easiest thing you can make in the cooking spectrum. Soups are how I learned how to cook. And we're talking like tiny Jen days when I was like 10 years old. I might have been younger, I can't remember. But I started experimenting with soups and Mom just kind of let me go. So I would usually dump some broth into a pot and then I would just rifle through the fridge and see what I could put in. It's how I learned how spices worked. I remember dumping like a bunch of paprika in something and expecting it to be magic, and then it was just paprika soup, and I was like, what is this? But I learned what paprika tastes like and how to use it and not to dump in a bunch of it. I learned how to use vegetables. I learned what vegetables tasted like because I would just pull whatever my mom stocked in the fridge out and chop it up and put it in. I learned that parsnips are not carrots, so that was an important lesson. They're really easy. Parents, if you have kids and you want them to learn how to cook and you want them to just get used to experimenting and trying how seasonings and tastes work together, let them make soup. It's super easy. That was an unintended pun, but I'm going to go with it. and it's probably the least messy thing you can let a kid experiment with. So I'm just a big soup fan all around. Soup is great, especially when it's not 80 degrees like it is today. But we're going to make it anyway because it's not going to stay 80 degrees, and it's going to be a nice comforting thing for me to eat, full of vegetables. We're doing butternut squash soup. It's butternut squash season. Get excited. Alright, so we're going to go over kind of the basics of how to prep a really good soup. You can probably apply a lot of what we're going to talk about today to pretty much any soup you make, because I start with a very basic, common base that you can build a soup off of. No matter what the soup is, it's going to make your soup taste awesome. I will teach you how to break down a butternut squash. I actually had another one. This is a tiny, tiny butternut squash. It's probably the smallest one I've ever seen. It's so convenient. Earlier, I broke down one the size of my thigh. I'm not joking. Like, it was big. It filled this entire bowl over here. But I didn't think you wanted to watch me do that for 20 minutes because that's a lot of dead time. So I saved the small one to show you how to do this. Things to know. Butternut squash is a winter squash. It has a thick skin that's not really edible, so you have to remove it, which makes breaking down a butternut squash kind of annoying. I'm going to show you how to do it. It's not going to be for everybody. I was definitely cursing up a storm because butternut squash is slippery and unwieldy and strangely shaped, so as you start to peel it, it starts flying out of your hands. I definitely had pieces shooting all over the place in my kitchen. That's a lesson to be learned, guys. If your food falls on the floor, it is not the end of that food. Don't throw it away. That's a waste of food. May sound gross, but you're cooking this stuff, which means that after I always wash it off. Like, I'm not putting a dusty, hairy thing in here. I have pets in here. The floor is not a great place, but I wash it thoroughly, and then you cook it. So any of the bacteria that might have gotten on there in the 3 seconds it was on the floor is gonna be killed. And let's be honest, there's bacteria on everything. I've washed this, there's probably still bacteria on it. When I cut into it, it's still gonna have bacteria on it. This is not fresh and clean, and nothing is sterile in this world. So if your food flies out of your hand, like a butternut squash will definitely do, it's not the end of the butternut squash. Don't throw it away. Continue cooking with it as best you can. If there's a really sketchy part of it that touched something really sketchy, just cut off that part and continue to use it. But yeah, so breaking down a butternut squash, probably not for everybody. The good news is there are handy dandy grocery stores out there that will do this for you. So you can absolutely buy a cubed butternut squash in the produce section of most grocery stores. I know I've seen it in Westside, I've seen it in Whole Foods. I'm positive Trader Joe's does this too. They pre-chop a lot of stuff. So if you're feeling a little daunted by this part of the task, don't worry. There are places that'll do it for you. You might have to pay a little bit extra, $1 or $2 more, but it might save you some frustration. So if you've always wanted to try this, but you're just like, I am intimidated by that squash, that's okay. You can still try this. Just go buy it pre-chopped. I love pre-chopped. I bought my mushrooms pre-chopped because I want to cut them. So there's nothing wrong with that, okay? All right. Also, an announcement before we get started. You may have noticed I was not here last week. I have decided to take the program every other week because I am tired all the time. Because the world is crazy and I am tired all the time. I'm sure you can relate. So we're going to still do the program. It's just going to be every other week from now on so that I can have some Sundays to just kind of sleep in and not prep for this stuff. So I will still see you around, just maybe not as frequently. All right, now we're going to jump into the butternut squash soup. So, get yourself some butternut squash. Like I said, I used a gigantic one. This baby one, I'm going to show you how to break it down. You want maybe like a large one or maybe 2 medium. If you have small ones, it's got to be like 3 of these guys. This is the base of your soup, so it's going to be the biggest ingredient. How does that break down in cups? I don't freaking know. I have this much squash already prepared, and I'm going to add a little bit more. That's probably too much, so that was one giant one. So you can probably get away with one giant one. I usually make this with one giant one, and that's it. So this is going to be a giant 1.5 with my little one, and that's just because it's a demo and I had it. But whatever you can find, just kind of eyeball it. You're not going to do this with a billion squash, and I kind of recommend the giant ones. They're really unwieldy, but you only have to peel it and chop it and scoop it once, which is kind of nice. You don't have to do it over and over and over again. You're going to need some apples. I'm going to use 2 apples for this recipe. I have already chopped the other one, which was much uglier than this beautiful Granny Smith apple. You can use any type of apple. You don't have to worry about tartness versus sweetness. This is not going to overpower the butternut squash. It's just kind of adding a dimension to it. So just 2 apples of your choice. I happen to have Granny Smith, so I'm using them. They also make good cooking apples, but that's really beside the point. The next thing you're going to do, it's actually the first thing you're going to do, but just in terms of prepping your ingredients, you're going to need what we call the mirepoix. What is mirepoix? That's a French cooking term. And it is something I've talked about before. It is the aromatic vegetable base of a soup. Now, if you guys have tuned into this show before, I've talked about how there are other things to flavor your food besides salt, and I have mentioned this combo a lot. Onion, garlic, celery, carrots. That base altogether with some herbs is a mirepoix. It is a base of a lot of French cooking, especially soups, because it just makes everything taste so much more dynamic. It adds a lot of flavor, a lot of character. It's really good stuff. Here is my mirepoix, all made. Aren't I good? I cut everything in advance so you guys didn't have to watch me do this. So that's the mirepoix. That's where you're going to start with this stuff. I'm going to get that cooking so that it can saute, so that by the time I walk you through breaking down the rest of the stuff, we're good to go. So before we put that in the oven, I'm just going to start you with I'm going to mention the rest of the flavoring spices that I put in this soup. Now, this is my own version that I've kind of workshopped over like the last 10 years, and it's evolved as I've learned more about spices. So what I put in mine is some cumin, some cinnamon. Yeah, that's a weird combo, but it really works well. It's awesome. And then I'm going to use fenugreek. Not a lot of people have heard of fenugreek, but it is really, really good. It's used in Indian cooking a lot. It's got some debated health properties. Some people say it helps with blood pressure. Some people say it helps with pregnancy. Some people say it doesn't help with pregnancy. We're not going to be using enough of it that it would ever have any adverse health effects. So pregnant ladies, you can totally eat it in the quantity I'm using. So I'm going to probably put in about a teaspoon of cinnamon. I'm probably going to put in about 2 to 3 teaspoons of cumin because I'm obsessed with it. And I'm probably going to put 1 to 2 teaspoons of fenugreek in there. This is a big soup, so probably that much. And I'm also, this is shocker, going to use thyme. I love thyme. I will never stop talking about it. You can't take it away from me. It's my favorite herb. So thyme. So those are all the flavoring agents going in. I am going to use a little bit of salt, but salt is not the only flavoring agent out there. There are so many. I'm using many of them today. We're piecing together things I've been teaching all summer. I'm really excited about this. Also, I just really like this recipe. Okay, we're going to get started. Lid off. I'm going to put it in the sink. You don't really need the lid until it's sauteing, simmering for a while. We're going to take some olive oil because we're going to start with the saute to get the mirepoix kind of fragrant and aromatic and release some of the awesome smells. 1 to 2 tablespoons of olive oil, or if you're me, whatever looks good. I don't measure things because I don't want to. Okay. I'm using the giant burner today on my stove, which has a giant burner. My old stove did not. So I'm going to turn it down pretty low because A, I got to do a lot of talking while this stuff sautés. I don't want it burning. And B, the giant burner is just really hot and I don't want to ruin anything. So I'm just going to distribute the olive oil across the bottom of the pan so nothing sticks. And then I'm going to really just dump the whole mirepoix in. Now, if you're worried about what size to slice everything, don't, because this is a pureed soup. If this was not a pureed soup, I would say cut it into really small bite-sized pieces. But this is a pureed soup, so size doesn't really count or matter. It just needs to be chopped a little bit so that it breaks down and cooks evenly. But you don't have to worry about, is it bite-sized, is it not? Alright, so onion, celery, garlic, carrots. That's my mirepoix. I'm going to dump that in first. I'm going to wait till it makes a delightful sizzling sound and then probably adjust the heat a little bit more. May have turned the heat down a little bit too much. Oh no, escaped carrot. There we go. Alright. Which leaves a nice open cutting board so I can properly show you how to deal with this butternut squash. I'm going to turn that up a little bit until I hear it sizzle. And then I'll probably turn it back. I'm just going to stir it around a bit. I'm going to add a couple of turns of salt. The best way to salt things is as you go, not wait till the end. If you wait till the end, you're going to have to dump a lot of salt, whereas if you do it like I do, a little here, a little there, you're not overdoing the salt, you're flavoring it as it goes, things will taste good. Okay, I'm going to turn that up a bit until it starts to cook, and then I'm going to turn it back down because I'm impatient. Alright, how to break down a butternut squash. My mirepoix is going to saute until the onions are translucent, aka so they're semi-see-through. And you can do this on medium to low heat. We're not in a rush here. We want to just kind of reveal the flavors, aromatic qualities of the vegetables so everything smells and tastes delicious. Also, we want the carrots to be soft. Carrots are pretty tough, so is celery, so we don't want that to be like crunchy in there as we're cooking. In the meantime, grab yourself your butternut squash. Grab yourself a vegetable peeler. We're going to peel this. It's going to get really slippery. This might fly out of my hands. It's not a big deal. You might see me curse, though, because it's annoying. All right. So this is obviously an odd shape. So when you're peeling, it'll be nice and straight, and then you'll get to the bulb, and it's a pain in the ass. So I sometimes just do the neck, and then I kind of flip it around and attack the bulb part. I'm going to do the best I can to do this as quickly as possible so that you don't have to sit here watching me peel a vegetable for 10 minutes. There's that nice little sizzling sound. I did not wait long enough for my pan to preheat because I'm in a rush. Always preheat your pan. Do as I say, not as I do, once again. Alright. Give this a little stir. Everything's distributed. I'm going to turn it down. I'm going to let that probably saute for like, I don't know, 5 minutes? 3 to 5 minutes would probably be best. Okay, so the bulk of this is peeled. Like I said before, the skin is not edible, so if you have little bits of skin, just try to get it all off as thoroughly as you can. I'm now working on the end bulb, which is the most annoying part of peeling this thing, but I'm doing a pretty good job. Thankfully, this is the small one, and I already got all my frustrations out with the big one. It's okay if the end has a little bit of skin. We're going to just cut that off. Same thing with this. I'm going to peel up to the stem, but then I'm going to cut the stem off so you don't have to get it perfect. Alright, peeled. Did not fly out of my hands yet. So cut each end off. We don't need that. We don't need that. Now comes the fun part. You cut it in half. Now with a small one, this is going to be a little bit easier. With a large one, it takes some finagling. You can start at the top, but if you have to hold it and you're cutting down, that's very dangerous for your hands. So I'm lying it on my side even though it's not flat. And I'm actually going to make a little bit of a stab at the skinny part of the neck. And then I'm going to pull towards me. Now my hand, you can't see, my hand is on this end well away from the blade, so the blade is not going to attack it. And just go slow, because there are some sticky parts. You're cutting through seeds and things like that. It's not going to always come all at once. Go very slow. If you feel like you have to force it, stop, reset. There. Now, the nice thing about butternut squash is the seeds don't go all the way through it. They just stay in the bulb. So you have all this you don't have to worry about. We just got to scoop the seeds out of the small part of it. Just take a spoon, dump it in the trash. That's what I'm about to do. Scoop, scoop, scoop. I've never eaten a butternut squash seed. I'm sure it's edible. I'm sure it's cookable. But you don't really need to worry about that. If you want to save them and grow them, that's also an option. Alright, so just dumping the seeds. Okay, so you scoop out the seeds. Pretty easy. After you're done with that, it's just a matter of chopping it into about 1-inch pieces. However you like to chop, chop away. There's no scientific way of doing this, just do it. Make sure the pieces are small enough that they'll cook quickly. You don't want to sit there boiling a whole butternut squash for an hour. Okay. So up until this point, I was prepping before we got on camera. I would say the whole prep probably took me around half an hour. So it's not that long. So this is not a very long-term recipe in terms of you're not stuck in the kitchen cutting and cutting and cutting and cutting. But it does take a while to cook, so you're not going to see the end product with this. I didn't make any ahead because I only have so many supplies. But I will walk you through how to finish this soup off. It's not hard. It's an easy recipe. It is a little time consuming, but half that time is just you wandering around doing other stuff while it cooks. You don't have to stand here cooking. You don't have to be on your feet forever. And once it's done, this will make enough soup to last you at least a week, which is awesome for me, who doesn't mind leftovers, because I don't have to cook for the rest of the week. And I enjoy that. I enjoy not cooking as much as I enjoy cooking, if that makes any sense. Okay, we have chopped up our butternut squash. Let's take a look at how the mirepoix is doing. So everything's cooking nicely and evenly. Can actually probably afford to turn up the heat a little bit. There we go. So we've increased the heat. So now I'm going to add more flavoring agents. So this is my thyme, which I already stripped off of their stems. So there's 2 ways you can go about using thyme. And I'm just going to demo how to strip it again, just in case people are new and haven't seen me use this yet. If you are new, thyme is my obsession. It is the tastiest of herbs. It smells awesome. It goes with pretty much everything. So if you're using thyme, it comes on a stick. The stick is not really edible. Like I said, there's 2 ways to do this. The first one, you take a bunch of thyme and you just kind of bind it together with some cooking twine and you throw it in there. I'm not doing that today because the last time I did that, I then forgot that it was in there and took my blender and shoved it in there and blended up a bunch of thyme tied together with thread so that I had all of these twigs in there, now chopped up into little bits that I can't remove. And I had a bunch of chopped up thread too, so that didn't go over so well. So because I forget these things, I'm actually just going to sit here and do the work to strip the thyme, and it didn't take me long. I think I spent like 10 minutes. So if you're new to using fresh thyme, you take the stick, you pinch over it, and then you just bring your finger down, taking all the leaves with it. Sometimes the top, like just happens, will fly off. That's okay. Save it because there's lots of tender leaves at the top there. But you're just trying to put as little of the stem in as possible. The stem is very woody. It's not chewable. It's not pleasant. So this is all my pre-prepared thyme. I'm just sprinkling it in there. I'm saving some because that comes in at the end. So just set some of that thyme aside. I would say at least a tablespoon more if you want. I find thyme is a lot like garlic. There's never too much of it. If it's something you like, there's absolutely never such a thing as using too much. Okay, so we've added the thyme. I'm now going to sprinkle the cinnamon on it. Like I said, about a teaspoon. We don't want an overpowering cinnamon flavor. This is not a pumpkin spice soup. Alright, I'm going to add the cumin. A little more cumin than cinnamon, like a 2-to-1 ratio about. I love cumin. There is such a thing as too much cumin, but it is very tasty. Add a little bit more. Okay, that brings us to the fenugreek. Now, I didn't have time to do this beforehand, but I got fenugreek seeds. I don't want to put the whole seed in there. I want this to be ground up. So I have a spice grinder, but instead of using that, I'm just going to demo using a mortar and pestle because I also happen to have that and I have room on my cutting board. So add what you're going to use. Like I said, it's about 1 to 2 teaspoons. Put the cap back on so it doesn't fall over and make a mess. It just totally happened to me. I'm also going to just mix the spices in. So you're adding the spices now because heat kind of releases some of the oils and makes it aromatic as well. I'm going to just get in there with my mortar and pestle and grind these seeds down as much as I can into mostly a powder. Break them down. This actually may take too long. I might actually get my spice grinder down because I'm tired and I don't want to sit here doing this. Alright, this is not going quickly enough, so I am going to get the spice grinder. When in doubt, do the easiest thing. My tiny, tiny kitchen has a lot of very high up shelves, so we can pack a lot into a little space. Now you get to see it in action. Alright. This is my Krupp spice grinder. I love it very, very much. It makes my life easier. So just pack everything in there, plug it in, and it's good to go. There we go. So you can use these things to grind your own coffee. You can use these things to grind your own spices, which is what I use it for. I was not aware, and a certain someone who was a pothead in college, who is not me, told me that this can be used to grind up your weed as well. But that is not why I use it. And I never knew that that was an application until someone told me. So, you live and you learn. Alright, my fenugreek is ground up. I thought this cup comes out. There we go. This is such a nice spice grinder. I'm going to just add this. So, what does fenugreek taste like? It's a little hard to put a name to exactly how it's flavored. I find it's kind of similar to cumin, but not quite the same. It's got a stronger, spicier, nuttier scent to it. It's freaking awesome. I can say that. If you've never tried it, I would sprinkle it over something you're sauteing. See if you like it. I just added it to this saute. It smells incredible. Oh God, yes. I just want to put my face in there. Alright, so everything is sauteing now. It's a beautiful thing. The spices are getting released. They're very aromatic. It's time to add the butternut squash. So this is the one I just broke down. Throw that all in there. Keep going. We're going to just let the heat take care of that for a bit. All of the squash. There's a lot going on. Give it a real good stir. You want the stuff on the bottom to get towards the top and the stuff on the top to get towards the bottom. You also want to get this squash kind of coated in everything that's been cooking. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. I don't want anything to burn. You might notice that the bottom of your pot is getting some brown stuff stuck to it. That is okay, because we're going to add a liquid and that's going to lift everything off. So we're just going to, the object of adding the butternut squash right now is not to cook it. It's not going to cook thoroughly. The object right now is to just get some heat, activating it a little bit, get it coated with the spices so everything's evenly distributed while we prep our apples. So I'm going to show you how to prep an apple real quick. Get yourself one of these. I love shortcuts. These are awesome. What you have to do with an apple for this soup is core it and peel it and then chop it up, which is a lot of steps, and I find it really annoying. I like to bake apple pie every year, and same thing, core, peel, chop. It's a lot. So get yourself one of these. It just helps expedite the process a bit. There, segmented and cored. Absolutely perfect. These are also great because I like my apples cut up. I'm weird. I don't want to bite into an apple, so this makes me want to eat apples. So vegetable peeler down the back just to take off the skin. Repeat with every single one. Going as quickly as I can, guys. Alright. We've been on for about half an hour, not too bad. We're going to quickly wrap this up. We're getting towards the end of it, I swear. It's like one more step after the apples and then we're done. Well, we're not done, but we're almost done. I also did a lot of talking about the nutritional benefits of soup today, so you'll have that as your knowledge base. But like I said, this is not the shortest recipe because there is about a half an hour of prep, but once you have everything ready to go, it goes really quick. It's in the pot. It takes care of itself. You don't have to worry about it. Everything smells amazing right now. I hope you guys are really jealous of me because my kitchen smells awesome. That is the glory of cooking with spices and with mirepoix. Everything is just aromatic goodness. Alright, my apples are peeled. I'm going to do a quick chop. Start tossing in your apples. Apples that sit out for a while will turn brown. They're still good. I like to chop them and throw them in as quickly as possible so I don't have to look at them. That keeps them from oxidizing. Oxidizing isn't bad, but if you can avoid it, why not? If there's a little skin on your apple, that's totally okay. It's not like a winter squash where you can't eat the skin. It's just a little less chewy fiber in your soup. Alright, so my apples are added. That's all of the ingredients that you need. Well, except one. The soup part. So I guess that's not all the ingredients you need. I'm going to do one more turn of the salt. And now we're ready for liquid. So when I advertised this, I said it was vegan. This is absolutely vegan. You can add vegetable stock. You can add water. Vegan soup. I am going to now add chicken broth because I personally have an addiction to chicken broth and I really like to use it. That's just my personal preference. So this is, again, do as I say, not as I do. If you want this to be vegan, very easy to make it vegan. Just grab your favorite stock, or you can literally use water. We've put a lot of flavoring in here, so you don't have to flavor it with any stock. I'm going to use my chicken stock. Chicken broth, chicken stock, vegetable broth, vegetable stock. I don't recommend a red meat stock or a seafood stock. That's going to taste a little bit strong, and it's going to obliterate all of the lovely subtle flavorings we just put in. You can use homemade, you can use store-bought. It's up to you what you want. Ooh, come on. And this is where I can't open a cap on television. There we go. Well, on the internet at least. Okay, so how much are you going to add? This is a 32-ounce box. I've just added probably about 12 other ounces. I like a really soupy soup. Again, though, this is a puree, so you don't have to bury this. But if you want it really, really, really thick, use less stock. Use 32 ounces or more. I put a metric ton of squash in here, so a normal soup, probably 32 is going to just make like a regular soup. If you want less, use a little less than 32 ounces. If you want more, I've added these two. Well, this is almost two-thirds gone, I think. This hasn't quite covered all of the veggies, and that's what I'm going for, so that it's more liquid. So I'm actually just going to fill this with water and add a little bit more. So you can start with stock and then add a little bit of water to top it off. There is nothing wrong with that. It's not going to take away from the flavor. Some of this is going to evaporate anyway and concentrate the flavor. And we've added our own flavorings. So you're not relying on the chicken stock to flavor this on its own. I'm just going to give a really good stir and try to kind of scrape the bottom a little bit because there's all this tasty brown stuff that was sticking to the bottom. That's just the Maillard reaction, which is just like, it's kind of like caramelization going on along with the spices kind of sticking. All that good stuff is going to cook into the soup now, which is what we want. Okay, so that's it. I have turned the heat all the way to high, and I'm going to cover this. Now, I did promise you could walk away. Don't walk away yet. There's one more thing you should wait for, and that is that this is going to come to a full rapid boil, and when it does, you turn the heat down to like a medium low. It depends how your oven or your stove works, but you just want it to simmer, and then you need to cook it for at least half an hour. Check with a fork, see if the butternut squash is cooked through and tender. If it's not, it might need to go a little bit longer, but you just cook until everything is really nice and soft. And then you puree. You could eat this whole. I don't know if it's going to be the best thing. I don't know what that would taste like. I've never tried it whole. This soup works really well as a puree. All the flavors kind of meld together and create this very smooth as silk texture. There's no cream involved whatsoever. This will make a very smooth, palatable flavor all on its own, even if you use water as the base or or vegetable stock. That's because the apples have a lot of pectin in them, which is like a gelatin-like fiber, and that's going to give you that lovely, smooth, velvety mouthfeel. That's why apples are awesome in soup. When you're done, you need to puree it. I'm going to use my stick blender, which I swear by. I think you can get these for like $35 on Amazon, so if it's in your budget, I recommend these because they're easy. Otherwise, to puree this, you're going to need to scoop it out into a large food processor or a blender of your choice. I don't really recommend sitting there mashing it. It's not going to really come out well. So this is a blended soup. So get yourself a stick blender. It really saves you a lot of effort, and I don't have to move this into anything else. But if you don't have that, I operated without one of these for years. You can totally do it without it. But yeah, I'm going to set the timer, 30 minutes. And then I'm going to check on it when it's done. And that brings me to the mushrooms. You may have asked earlier, why did you hold up a pack of mushrooms? So this is kind of the last part. I'm just going to quickly demo this. You guys have seen me cook mushrooms before, so this is nothing really spectacularly different or new. A little bit of olive oil, about a tablespoon to 2. Preheat on medium. This is also why I saved some of that thyme. And I'm not going to do the whole package because this is a very, very small pan and you don't want to crowd the mushrooms. Never crowd the mushrooms. They will not cook evenly. So why are we putting mushrooms in this soup that I added all the ingredients to already? I like pureed soups, but sometimes just for some variety, a little bit of a different mouthfeel, and in the case of mushrooms, some extra protein. I like to top my butternut squash soup with some sautéed shiitake mushrooms. I'm a big fan of them. I had this in a restaurant once upon a time back in Astoria when I lived there, and it was like a revelation. It adds some umami flavor, and it's just really, really awesome. So what I do is I cook up the soup separately. I saute my mushrooms, add them to the pot, or to the pan rather, and I keep the mushrooms separate. I'm not going to dump them in the soup when it's done cooking. And then when I plate it, I'm going to put the soup in a bowl and sprinkle some of the mushrooms on top in the center. I will provide a very awesome photo of this when it is completed. Put that over there. So I've put my mushrooms in my tiny pan. Don't crowd the mushrooms. You're going to add a little bit of salt, a couple of turns. And then you're going to add a sprinkle of thyme. And then you're just going to saute until they're going to look a little bit wet and shrunken, nicely coated in olive oil, smaller than they were. That's when they're done and tender. And that's it. It's a very simple preparation for the mushrooms. I have demoed before World's Perfect Mushrooms, where you add some cream sherry. You can do that as well. I don't really think in this case it needs that extra oomph because they're going to be sinking into a very spiced, very flavorful soup. So I'm not going to do that with this time. But you can if you want. Half the joy of cooking is experimenting and seeing what you personally love as a flavor. I developed this soup. I started with a recipe. Over time, I was like, what happened if I added this? And when I learned about fenugreek, I was like, I want to try this. And it just kept evolving over time, and this is my recipe that I came up with on my own. Well, with the help of influences from restaurants I ate at and classes I took where I learned about this stuff. But that's kind of the evolution of cooking, is you start with something that someone else teaches you, and then you kind of make it your own. So that's how to make butternut squash apple soup, a la Jen Rock. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I know it was a little bit longer than usual, but we're making a big deal here, and it's going to be awesome. I really hope you enjoyed this recipe, guys, because it's one near and dear to my heart. I also hope the weather gets a little colder so you can enjoy this and not be eating this in 80-degree weather. But if so, Halloween tank tops, they work. Alright, guys. If you like what you saw here today, I do accept donations through my Venmo. You can send any donations to @JSRockRD. If you like what I do and you'd like to learn more, you want to work on healthy eating or a personal health goal, I do run a private practice. I'm accepting patients. You can always make an appointment on my website, jrockrd.com. Or shoot me a message, either through Facebook or my email's on my website. So don't be a stranger. If you have any questions about what I cooked today, or you really liked it, or you have a suggestion, feel free to leave a comment in the chat. And if not, I'll see you in 2 weeks. Have a great week, guys.